He can close million-dollar deals. He can lead teams. He can dominate industries. But when it comes to one woman, he freezes. He overthinks. He withdraws. Why is it that some of the most successful men in the world struggle the most with dating? If you've ever wondered why high-value, driven, accomplished men often fail in love, this is going to change how you see everything. Success in business doesn't automatically translate to emotional intelligence. A man can master markets, lead teams, negotiate high-stakes deals, and make calculated decisions under pressure, yet still struggle to understand the emotional language of intimacy. The skills that make someone powerful in the professional world are often the exact skills that create distance in romantic relationships. Business rewards logic, decisiveness, and control. It values strategy over sensitivity, outcomes over feelings, and strength over softness. In that environment, emotions are often viewed as distractions, something to manage, minimize, or suppress in order to stay sharp and competitive. Over time, many high-achieving men train themselves to detach from their own emotional world because it makes them more effective performers. They become solution-oriented, efficient, and focused on results. But relationships do not operate on performance metrics or measurable achievements. They operate on connection, empathy, and emotional presence. Emotional intelligence requires a completely different muscle. It requires self-awareness, the ability to recognize not just what you're thinking, but what you're feeling. It demands vulnerability, which means allowing someone to see uncertainty, fear, insecurity, or doubt. In business, revealing uncertainty can weaken your position. In love, hiding it can weaken your bond. A successful man may instinctively try to solve his partner's emotions the same way he solves corporate problems: analyze, strategize, fix. But often, a woman is not looking for a solution. She is looking for understanding. She wants to feel heard, not managed. She wants to feel emotionally met, not logically corrected. When a man responds with advice instead of empathy, or distance instead of openness, she may feel unseen, even if his intentions are good. High performers are also accustomed to control. They create structure, predict outcomes, and reduce risk. Emotional intimacy, however, is unpredictable. It requires sitting in discomfort without immediately trying to eliminate it. It means accepting that you cannot control how someone feels about you or guarantee a specific outcome. For a man whose identity is built on competence and mastery, that loss of control can feel deeply unsettling. Emotional intelligence asks him to slow down, to listen without defensiveness, and to respond without ego. It asks him to value connection as much as achievement and presence as much as productivity. High-achieving men often prioritize logic over vulnerability because logic has been the very tool that elevated them to success. From a young age, many ambitious men learn that emotions can cloud judgment, while rational thinking sharpens it. In competitive environments, whether academic, corporate, or entrepreneurial, decisions are rewarded when they are strategic, calculated, and efficient. Emotional restraint becomes a strength. The ability to detach from feelings and focus on outcomes is praised as maturity and leadership. Over time, this conditioning shapes how they navigate not just business, but life. They begin to rely on analysis instead of introspection, solutions instead of sensitivity, and structure instead of softness. Logic feels safe because it is measurable and controllable. Vulnerability, on the other hand, feels unpredictable and exposed. In relationships, this reliance on logic creates a quiet disconnect. When a partner expresses hurt, frustration, or insecurity, a high-achieving man may instinctively search for the most practical response. He listens for facts rather than feelings. He looks for inconsistencies in the argument instead of the emotion behind it. If she says she feels distant, he may evaluate how much time they've spent together instead of exploring why she feels emotionally disconnected. To him, resolving the issue means identifying the flaw in reasoning and correcting it. But emotional intimacy is not built through debate or efficiency. It is built through empathy, validation, and openness. Vulnerability requires admitting uncertainty, acknowledging fear, and revealing parts of oneself that are not polished or perfected. For a man who has built his identity on competence and strength, that can feel deeply uncomfortable. There is also an internal fear that vulnerability may weaken his image. High achievers are often admired for their confidence and composure. They are seen as stable, reliable, and in control. Allowing someone to see doubt or insecurity can feel like risking that perception. So instead of saying, "I'm afraid of losing you," he may withdraw. Instead of admitting, "That hurt me," he may become distant or analytical. Logic becomes a shield that protects the ego but limits emotional closeness. Over time, this pattern can create a relationship dynamic where the man feels misunderstood and the woman feels unheard. He believes he is being rational and constructive, while she experiences him as emotionally unavailable. The very mindset that drives his external success can quietly undermine his ability to form deep, meaningful connection, because vulnerability is not a weakness to eliminate, but a bridge to intimacy that cannot be replaced by reason alone. Power and status can attract attention, but not genuine connection. A man who has built influence, wealth, or recognition will naturally draw interest. Confidence, leadership, and visible success create presence. People notice him when he walks into a room. Conversations gravitate toward him. Opportunities open more easily. In the early stages of dating, this level of achievement can feel magnetic. It signals security, ambition, and capability, qualities that are widely admired. However, attention is not the same as intimacy. Attraction sparked by status often centers on what he represents rather than who he is. The admiration may be real, but it is frequently tied to the image of success rather than the complexity of his character. When a man is valued primarily for his accomplishments, it can subtly distort his dating experiences. He may begin to question whether interest is directed at him as a person or at the lifestyle attached to him. Compliments may focus on what he owns, what he earns, or the network he has built. Invitations may increase, but the conversations may remain surface level. Over time, this can create emotional fatigue. He might feel celebrated yet unseen, admired yet unknown. The more visible his success becomes, the more cautious he may grow. Instead of opening up naturally, he may test intentions, hold back personal details, or keep emotional distance as a protective measure. The fear of being valued for resources rather than authenticity can lead him to guard the very parts of himself that would allow real connection to form. Status also changes the dynamic of vulnerability. When someone is perceived as powerful, others often assume they are emotionally strong, unaffected, and self-sufficient. There is less space for them to express doubt, insecurity, or fear without feeling exposed. A successful man may feel pressure to maintain composure at all times, even in private relationships. He may struggle to show need because need feels incompatible with authority. Yet genuine connection requires mutual openness. It requires moments where both people reveal uncertainty and trust the other to handle it with care. Power can create admiration, but intimacy is built through shared humanity. If a man remains positioned as the provider, the leader, or the impressive figure at all times, the relationship can become imbalanced. Attention may continue, but emotional depth requires lowering the pedestal and allowing someone to see beyond the title, beyond the income, and beyond the public image into the private self that exists underneath fear of being used, creates emotional walls. When a man reaches a certain level of financial stability, influence, or social visibility, his dating experiences often shift. He becomes more aware of what he offers materially: security, access, opportunities, lifestyle. And with that awareness comes suspicion. He may start questioning intentions in ways he never did before. Is she drawn to his character or to his comfort? Does she admire his values or the benefits attached to being close to him? Even if no one has directly betrayed him, the mere possibility can shape his mindset. The higher he rises, the more he feels he has to lose. That perceived risk can quietly harden him. This fear does not always show up as obvious distrust. Sometimes it appears as caution disguised as standards. He may delay commitment, keep conversations surface level, or avoid discussing finances and future plans. He might test loyalty indirectly, observing how someone reacts to boundaries or limitations. In extreme cases, he may downplay his success early on just to see whether interest remains. These behaviors often stem from a desire for reassurance, yet they can unintentionally create distance. Instead of building connection through openness, he builds protection through control. Emotional walls form not because he lacks the desire for love, but because he fears exploitation more than he trusts intimacy. Over time, constant vigilance becomes exhausting. When a man assumes he must guard himself at all times, he struggles to relax into vulnerability. Genuine emotional bonding requires a level of trust that cannot coexist with constant suspicion. If he is always analyzing motives, he cannot fully experience presence. He may withhold generosity, affection, or reassurance until he feels completely certain of someone's intentions. But certainty in relationships is rarely absolute. The irony is that the more guarded he becomes, the harder it is for a sincere partner to feel close to him. She may sense emotional distance without understanding its source. His protection mechanisms, meant to filter out opportunists, can also filter out authentic connection. Fear of being used often masks a deeper fear of being valued only for what he provides rather than who he is. Many high-achieving men tie their identity to their ability to give, protect, and supply. When they suspect that these qualities are the only reason someone stays, it can feel dehumanizing. Instead of addressing that vulnerability directly, they reinforce their defenses. Walls become habits, and habits become personality traits. What begins as self-protection can slowly transform into emotional isolation, where the desire for real partnership exists alongside an inability to fully trust anyone enough to allow it to develop perfectionism and control. Issues sabotage intimacy in ways that are often subtle but deeply damaging. A man who has achieved success through discipline, precision, and high standards is conditioned to believe that excellence is the answer to everything. In his professional life, perfectionism may have been rewarded. Attention to detail, relentless self-improvement, and refusal to accept mediocrity likely propelled him forward. Control helped him manage risks, anticipate outcomes, and stay ahead of competition. Over time, these traits became part of his identity. He takes pride in being composed, capable, and always prepared. However, the same mindset that creates professional stability can quietly undermine emotional closeness. Intimacy is not built in perfect conditions. It thrives in spontaneity, imperfection, and emotional unpredictability. When a man approaches relationships with the same performance driven mentality he uses in business, he may begin treating love as something to optimize rather than experience. He might analyze conversations afterward, replaying what was said, critiquing his responses, or evaluating whether he maintained the right image. If conflict arises, he may focus more on being right than being understanding. Control becomes his coping mechanism. Instead of allowing emotions to unfold naturally, he attempts to steer discussions toward resolution as quickly as possible, uncomfortable with uncertainty or emotional messiness. Perfectionism can also create unrealistic expectations, both for himself and for his partner. He may expect loyalty without flaw, communication without misunderstanding, and harmony without disagreement. When reality fails to meet these standards, frustration builds. Rather than viewing imperfection as a normal part of human connection, he may interpret it as a problem to fix or a sign of incompatibility. This mindset leaves little room for vulnerability. If he believes he must always appear strong, composed, and emotionally stable, he will struggle to admit when he feels insecure, jealous, or unsure. Revealing those emotions feels like a crack in the image he has worked so hard to maintain. Control issues further complicate intimacy because they limit emotional freedom. A partner may feel monitored rather than trusted, managed rather than embraced. When one person constantly tries to regulate the pace, tone, or direction of the relationship, authenticity begins to shrink. Intimacy requires surrendering the illusion of total control and accepting that another human being has independent thoughts, moods, and reactions. For a man accustomed to shaping outcomes, this unpredictability can feel threatening. Yet, without relinquishing the need to perfect and control every dynamic, emotional closeness remains shallow, structured, and carefully contained rather than deeply felt. Many successful men struggle to switch from provider mode to partner mode because their identity has been deeply rooted in responsibility, performance, and output. From early on, they are often taught that their primary value lies in what they can build, earn, and secure. Success reinforces this belief. The more they achieve, the more they are praised for their ability to provide stability and resources. Over time, this role becomes second nature. They measure their worth by productivity and problem solving. When challenges arise, their instinct is to step in, take charge, and handle it. This mindset works exceptionally well in career and leadership environments, but relationships require a different kind of presence. In provider mode, a man focuses on ensuring comfort, safety, and financial security. He expresses care by paying for dinners, planning trips, solving practical issues, and offering advice. These actions are meaningful, but they are only one layer of intimacy. Partner mode demands emotional accessibility. It requires listening without immediately trying to fix, sitting beside someone in vulnerability instead of standing in front of them as the protector. For many high-achieving men, slowing down into emotional presence feels unfamiliar. If their partner expresses stress or sadness, they may instinctively respond with solutions rather than empathy. They believe they are being supportive, yet their partner may feel emotionally alone because what she needs in that moment is connection, not correction. The challenge also lies in shifting from authority to equality. In professional spaces, successful men are often decision makers. They are accustomed to leading conversations and directing outcomes. In intimate relationships, however, authority must soften into collaboration. A partnership thrives on shared influence, mutual emotional investment, and balanced vulnerability. If a man remains in constant provider mode, he may unintentionally create distance by positioning himself as the one who gives and manages rather than the one who shares and feels. His partner may appreciate his reliability but long for deeper emotional engagement. Another layer of this struggle is internal. Provider mode feels safe because it is tangible. He can measure how well he is doing by visible contributions. Partner mode, on the other hand, is intangible. It involves emotional attunement, reassurance, affection, and openness, qualities that cannot be quantified. Transitioning between these roles requires unlearning the belief that love is proven primarily through provision. It requires recognizing that while security builds comfort, emotional intimacy builds closeness. Without that shift, a relationship can become stable yet emotionally distant, functional yet lacking depth. Success can build a powerful life, but it does not automatically build a connected heart. A man can master discipline, strategy, leadership, and provision, yet still struggle with emotional intimacy if he has never been taught how to cultivate it. The traits that create achievement, logic, control, independence, high standards, and relentless focus are not flaws. They are strengths. But when those strengths are applied to love without adjustment, they can quietly create distance instead of closeness. Attention is easy to attract with power. Trust is not. Provision creates comfort. Vulnerability creates connection. Control creates stability. Emotional presence creates intimacy. These are different skill sets, and confusing them is where many successful men go wrong. Love does not respond to performance metrics. It does not reward perfectionism. It does not deepen through suspicion or constant self-protection. It deepens when a man is willing to be seen beyond his titles, beyond his income, beyond his competence. Switching from provider mode to partner mode requires emotional courage. It means listening without fixing, leading without dominating, protecting without controlling, giving without guarding every part of yourself. It means understanding that strength is not diminished by softness, it is completed by it. The truth is, success in the external world proves capability, but success in love requires emotional intelligence. And when a man learns to integrate both, ambition with empathy, power with vulnerability, logic with emotional awareness, he doesn't lose his edge. He becomes more complete.